Hey everybody, this is TJ with Avidyne's Tech Support Group. Today I want to do a video to explain some of the finer points of the interface between an IFD 440, an IFD 540, or an IFD 550 to the Avidyne Integra EXP5000 PFD. So you can see that's the drawing that we've got pulled up at the moment. And I just want to kind of discuss some of the finer points on this interface drawing. It's pretty straightforward, but it always helps to understand exactly what's going on with a particular interface. So the first thing we want to talk about is our VOR ILS ARINC 429 output. So you'll notice both IFDs are set up with a VOR ARINC 429 output going to our PFD. Now, what this does is this gives us all of the ARINC 429 digital labels associated with a VOR or an ILS, basically your VHF radio functions. Okay, and it gives us redundancy because we can listen to VLOC 1 or we can listen to VLOC 2 from the PFD side of things. Now, that being said, we also have to go into the IFD and we have to configure these. So that's going to be the next thing we're going to take a look at here. So in maintenance mode on the IFD, on configuration page 9, this is where that VOR ILS gets configured for the VHF output. So if we take a look at this page, the format is correct. We want that to read VHF, but the SDI, what this setting actually does is it designates whether the IFD is putting out information for a VOR ILS 1 or a VOR ILS 2. So depending on whether this is a number 1 IFD or a number 2 IFD, that's going to determine how we set this SDI setting. The PFD is expecting low speed, so our receive and transmit speeds here are correct, so we're all happy with that. But this SDI setting, that really is the only one that we probably are going to have to go in there and touch because it will come from the factory defaulted to common. Okay? So if we go back to our drawing, that takes care of our VOR ILS ARINC 429 outputs. And we've also got, if you look here, GPS ARINC 429 outputs, again on both IFDs, the number 1 and the number 2. Now, it's important to bear in mind that these are outputs. These are all outputs from the IFD to the PFD. Okay? So all 4 of the lines we've talked about so far are all outputs from the IFDs going into the PFD. So if we look specifically at our GPS ARINC 429 outputs, well, let's go have a look at that configuration page. Where that configuration page is going to be is ARINC 429 port configuration page 1 in maintenance mode under the config tab. Now, what we're talking about here is this output. So we're talking about this guy right here. Again, the PFD is expecting a low speed, so that's fine, but the data, we're going to have to program this. We're going to have to tell it, you know, what data we want this thing to be putting out in what format. So the one that works best with the Avidyne PFD for this output right here is Gamma 429 graphics with intersections. So if we set this up for low speed, Gamma 429 graphics with intersections, we're sending out all of the GPS data that the PFD can take and do something with. So that's that line. Now, the other piece that we also need to talk about here is this SDI setting. So again, just like the VHF, this SDI setting needs to be set up for whether this is a number 1 IFD or a number 2 IFD. So here, it's labeled a little bit differently. It's labeled as an LNAV 1 or LNAV 2. Okay? But again, that's all that's saying is we're going to call this our number 1 navigator. We're going to call the number 2 IFD the number 2 navigator. And that just lets the PFD know which one it's listening to at any given time. Okay? And the next piece you'll see down here is VNAV. So part of this GPS 429 output has the capability, if we're talking about a WAS installation, to provide vertical navigation by way of a GPS LPV approaches. So any of your GPS related vertical navigation stuff requires WAS. And in order for this to be a WAS installation, of course you have to have the WAS antenna and all of that good stuff, but the PFD also has to know what to do with that information once it receives it. So I'm going to go take a look at something here real quick and show you guys where you can figure this thing out pretty quickly. If you're not sure whether your PFD can take WAS GPS approach information or not, go to your PFD, fire it up, and take a look at this page right here. This is the screen that pops up while the AHRS is warming up, while the AHRS is aligning. And where you're going to find that information, there's a couple places you can look. So if we look right up here in the top right hand corner of this box, it says that this PFD is at R6.0. So that's release 6.0. I can tell you right away, this one is not WAS capable. This needs to be release 7 or later. The other place that you can go double verify this is looking at the software part number right here. And the software part number for a WAS compatible PFD has to be 530-00194 or later. This is a 177, so this one's not going to do. If you guys run into this out in the field, don't worry about it. It just means that you need to get a hold of tech support and schedule an RMA to have this thing sent home to get upgraded for WAS capability, because this PFD currently isn't going to do it. Again, that's release 7 or later up here, or 530-00194 or later right here on that screen. And that'll tell you whether or not that thing is WAS capable or not. So in this particular scenario, if this were really the PFD I were interfacing this thing with, on this page I would go ahead and leave this VNav where it says disable labels. What that means is I'm not going to send out the vertical navigation information as it pertains to GPS. Now, let's flip the script and say, all right, my PFD is WAS capable. I was a 530-00194 or later. So I want to go ahead and give this thing LPV approach capability. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change this disable label setting to enable labels. That's it. It's that simple. So you might tuck this away in the back of your mind as well. So if you're troubleshooting one of these things, if you do a WAS upgrade on an aircraft, and the pilot reports back that, hey, I didn't get any vertical guidance on this GPS approach that I tried, there's a good chance somebody probably missed this enable labels setting right here. So that's first place to check. If you give us a call, that's going to be the first thing we have you take a look at. So if we go back to our drawing, we've covered our GPS output from the IFDs. We've covered our VOR ILS output from the IFD. The one thing we haven't talked about yet is the information coming back into the IFD from the PFD. So you'll notice this ARINC 429 right here gets paralleled and split between both IFDs. So both IFDs are receiving the same data stream from the PFD, and it's all coming from channel 0. It's channel 0 transmit ARINC 429 from the PFD. So let's go take a look at that real quick. So on the PFD side of things, here are all of the labels that are going to get transmitted on channel 0. So the PFD is spitting all of this out. Which of these labels the IFD is actually capable of listening to and doing something with that data is kind of dependent upon how we have the IFD configured on the input side to take this information in and do something with it. Okay, so if we go back and take a look, it's transmitted out of the PFD into the IFDs on this ARINC 429 receive port. So again, we're going to have to go to ARINC 429 port configuration, page 1, and we're going to have to take a look at input number 1, because that's how the pins line up. That should be ARINC 429 input number 1. Again, it's low speed. That's what the PFD is putting out, so that's fine. But we're going to have to set this data field. And what we're going to look for on the IFD side of the house is going to be labeled Honeywell EFIS. And what this does is this allows us to take the most information out of that 429 data stream and do the most with it. It gives us everything from baro-corrected altitude to selected course to you name it, it's there. So that's going to be the setup on the IFD side of things. Now, that being said, once we've got everything configured here, and we've got everything configured on our AirLink 429 VHF page, and we've got everything wired up just the way the print has it, and we fire up the PFD and we fire up our IFDs, there are a couple of places we can go to make sure that everything's communicating the way it's supposed to. On the IFD side of things, the first place we're going to go is in maintenance mode. Or not maintenance mode, I'm sorry, flight mode. So from normal flight mode, I'll go back to the map page here so I can kind of walk you guys through it. So when you typically fire up the IFD, it's going to take you to your map page. If you go to the aux page group, we're going to go to the Utilities tab, and then we're going to go to Calculators. And if you see the data coming in here as green, this is what we're looking for. If it's white, that means it's not being received by an external source. If it's green, it means that there is an external source communicating this information to the IFD. So this altitude should match what you see on your PFD. This calculated airspeed should match what you see on your PFD. This heading information should match what you see on your PFD. And your outside air temperature should match as well. So this is a good indication that we are receiving air data information from our PFD. So that's one place you can go look. Another place you can go is in maintenance mode. So if you fire up your IFD in a maintenance mode, it's going to default to this page. It's going to tell you there's no USB device detected, and that's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to toggle over to our status page, and we're going to toggle this info button until it says info AirLink 429. What this does is this monitors the inputs on the IFD AirLink 429 input to see if there's data coming across this. So in this scenario, this would indicate I've got a problem with my PFD to IFD wiring information, right? Because I don't have any data coming in on this AirLink 429 port number 1. One thing I would probably do is fire up the opposite IFD and go take a look and see if it's receiving any data. Remember that that line is paralleled, so if one's receiving data, the other one should be also. So just a little troubleshooting hint, a little tip that might help you out in the future when interfacing IFDs to Integra PFDs. I hope you learned something, and like always, if you guys have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, don't hesitate to shoot us an email at techsupport@avidyne.com, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you've got. All right, thanks for your time. Bye.